Let me put that point perhaps to Jules. I mean, there is, in effect, part of a low-carbon plan and a developing country not really getting the response that it needs.
Yes, I must admit it reminds me of a similar story from President Jagdeo of Guyana, who offered his UK-sized national forest up for the global community and wasn't able to raise the money even to create a plan for how to preserve that forest. It is truly a tragedy. I think you're absolutely right that we're going to look for mechanisms to match your specific offer to the global commons, i.e. we will not tap these oil fields, we'll preserve the rainforest, to funding sources. And there needs to be a mechanism whereby your plan can sort of be on the table and then developed countries can say, okay, that's a plan that we like, or that's a plan that we'll like, and we'll put our money here. The flip side of that is then developed countries will need to feel accountable for delivering a certain amount of money, because there will be a certain number of plans on the table and there will be a need to fund those plans, and developed countries will need to feel the ownership. And where the Copenhagen negotiations right now seem to be locked is what comes first? Is the plans first, or is the commitment of money first? And of course that's a bit of a negotiating question. It's also a bit of the process in the run-up to Copenhagen question. But in the end, it's also a question of trust. Global community will need to have trust in the solutions that we come up with. And I think it is very understandable that developing countries are saying, well, with all due respect, we've been looking for money and it hasn't been forthcoming, and you've made commitments in the past and you haven't delivered. So now it's time to see what you're really able to deliver. So somewhere in the course of the next months, we will need to see Europe, we need to see the United States put some money where their mouth is, need to put some money on the table and say, okay, if we have solid plans from the developing countries that drive mitigation, that need money in order to fund adaptation, then this is the sort of money that we are willing to put on the table. And these are the mechanisms by which that money comes on the table that we can count on. Goes back to the point that Saleem was making earlier. We need to have clear mechanisms, for example, a tax on aviation, possibly a tax on global shipping, possibly a automatic levy on CDMs, even if you don't like them, but mechanisms whereby we can see money coming on the table that then can get matched to your plan, the plan from President Jagdeo, other plans to say, this is what needs to happen.
And Saleemul, I wonder if you'd like to comment on that last question, but actually to reframe this so that through innovative techniques for saving,
Absolutely. I think the Ecuador example and the Guyana example are very good ones of some of the developing countries actually being proactive. I can mention my country, Bangladesh, where they've also developed a national strategy, a climate change strategy, which initially focused mainly on adaptation because Bangladesh is such a vulnerable country. But when they looked at it at a more strategic level, they also included mitigation actions that the country could do and integrated it within the plan. And one of the interesting things that happened when the plan was presented to the cabinet, the finance minister was so convinced by this, he said, you know, why are we, if this is so important for us, why are we waiting for funds to come in from outside? We should be doing something ourselves. And he committed in the last budget a few months ago, $50 million from the national budget towards implementing the national climate change plan and invited other countries to contribute. And a number of countries have offered to contribute. And they're setting up a multi-donor trust fund for implementing the climate change plan. So I think that there are one or two interesting examples out there which can be highlighted, leveraged. A lot of people simply don't know about these things, that they're happening, and simply highlighting them and pointing to them as a way forward to break this old impasse of North versus South and developing country versus developed country and development assistance versus new ways of doing things. I think we have to try everything we can think of to solve this problem. There's no one single solution. There are multiplicity of solutions, and the more the merrier.
And there are immediate challenges in the next, half year up to Copenhagen, and then longer term beyond that.
Yeah, I think that what Saleem just said is also a very good illustration of what I heard Lord Stern say a couple of weeks ago. If each country develops this plan that says this is how we get onto a low carbon growth trajectory, then there's some things in that plan that you would want to do just because it's in your own best interest, and you'd get on with that. And there'll be some things that some countries will do because they want to be a good part of the global commons and they want to make their contribution. And then there's going to be substantial parts, particularly in the developing countries, plans that says, okay, we would like to do this, we can do this, but we will need some financial help. And going back to your question earlier, at the first part, what can countries do that is clearly in the self-interest of these countries? We can come up with a list of 5, 6 simple good ideas that already help drive low carbon prosperity that are in everybody's best interest. I mean, televisions and boilers and laptops that use less energy, standards for automotive, for cars that use less fuel, building codes that drive the reduction in emissions from the built environment are all policies that countries can put in place right now that don't cost incremental money or cost very little incremental money and earn themselves back very easily, certainly with oil at $70 a barrel. So in these plans, I'm sure we will find those things that countries can do in their own self-interest, those they'll do for the common good, and those where there will be a contribution needed from the developed world.
Thank you, and I will just give you the floor in just a second, but just, can I put the question back to you with Ecuador? I mean, how patient is Ecuador on this question? I mean, at what point with oil at $70 a barrel will you, as a country, say, sorry, we've offered this low carbon path, we've offered the world the chance to save the rainforest, but actually we're a poor country, there's oil, we need to sell it. At what point do you say we're going to opt for the traditional higher carbon path?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think it was quite an important question because we did put a deadline, and it was last December. And after that, we saw that it didn't work. We have opened indefinitely. So we are expecting to still receive the participation of the international community. We are not going to exploit the oil, but still there is pressure in Ecuador. There is pressure inside of the government and outside of the government to exploit that oil. So
this times in with the conditionality that Jules was talking about.
Yes.
If you want us to mitigate, you've got to give us a hand.
Yes, still, but we did give an end, and as I said, it didn't work. So we are still working bilateral, multilateral with countries to work with it. And we have participated as a country. We elaborate ourselves the strategy. We pay for it. We are still working with it. It's a great participation of Ecuador, and we are not receiving that money. And I should mention also that in this area are 2 tribes of uncontact people. There is also, as it was mentioned here, the relation, direct relation of human rights involved there too, because there's these 2 tribes of uncontact indigenous people. Thank you.
And in the end, we're running out of time, but a quick one, yeah?